Okay, so one of the next things, as we got various bits drying, we're going to tackle quite the tricky part of putting the decals over the nose section. Now for this particular one we're going to be using the black and white checks on the decal sheet here to go on. Now there is two ways. You could mask it and hand paint it, but the time it would take to do that, unless you've got a really tricky curve to do, it's well worth investing in some micro set and sol or some type of decal setting solution to help it all conform and bite in. The only trouble you might have is obviously different colours bleeding through. Obviously if you've got a dark colours, your greens underneath camo pattern, perhaps it will show through, but because we've just got our L-clads underneath there, we should be okay. Now the only thing I've done before we started out is that on the actual decal itself you've actually got little lines to help it sort of curve in. Now the trouble is the carrier film tends to blend over there, so what I've done, I've scored them all on the paper, just cut them in. You'll see where they are, so you can actually just run your knife down each one just to score them in. Now all we're going to do now is cut it from the sheet. Okay, now the thing with this, we're going to do one at a time because we don't want to rush in there and have all types of problems. So basically this here we've got here, which is number 46, I believe. You always check your instructions to make sure you're right, but 46 goes on the port side of the engine. So as I'm looking at it, this is going to go around here. Now it bangs, it goes up to these the cowl flaps here and wraps itself round. So what we're going to do, we're going to take our spring-loaded clamp here. I've got some warm water. Put it in upside down, just stops it curling up. In it goes. Just give that about sort of 10-15 seconds to work its magic. In the meantime, we just whip these off. Okay, we're going to lift that out and we're just going to nudge it with our finger to see if it moves, which it does, which is perfect. Okay, so here we go. This is the tricky bit. Take our warm water and we're just going to give it a bit of a splash. Now because we're going on to L-clad, you can't really hope for a better finish because you should be completely like glass. Very, very smooth. Water here won't even stick to it, it's just bubbling straight off, which is good. Then all we're going to do for the moment is just push that into position like so. So just take your time with it, and there we go, we're there. So you take your cotton bud, okay, and gently, very gently, just make some pass, because all you're trying to do is get out any massive blobs of water you may have on the go down there. Okay, so we're happy with that, how that one is. So now we'll get the next one, which is the top one, which in hindsight here I really should have done first. So if you're going to do it, I would put the top one on first and then do the sides. Okay, so as you can see, we're all on there and we're all roughly, now it's all laying a little bit wrinkly and all the rest of it. Now there's two ways you could do this. You could put the set on first and that will soften the decals and help them all melt in. Or you can use the actual sol, which is more of the setting solution, which is really going to, you know, weld them down and get them in there. I'm going to go straight for the old sol here and get things moving. And all I'm going to do is just lightly brush along these join lines first. Now the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want it all moving around too much to start with. I just want it all to nicely sort of bend into position without moving about, because your only trouble is we're still quite wet on the underside, and as I say, it could start to pull, move as it shrivels up and various bits like that. Now we're probably going to have to come in here a lot of times with pins, with air holes and various joins to sort out, but as long as we keep an eye on it as it's all working its magic, we should be okay. So there we go, we've gone all the way around there now, just in the joins around the back edge if you like, because what will that help is draw all the water out. Now we're going to leave that just for a few moments just to start wrinkling up and to bite well. As soon as that's bitten well and we're all happy how it's laying and we've got no gaps and bits and pieces to worry about, then we'll give it another coat again, just to help things all really sort of pull tight and get in. So I don't know how well you'll be able to see this. We just bring you in quite a bit, but you can see along this edge here, sorry, might be able to see there, work it out, that it's actually all pretty wrinkling up on there okay, and that's what happens. So if we just go a bit more, I'm just going to all over this edge just a sec, just to show you, and you should notice it really will start to wrinkle up. Now the thing is, don't touch it, don't knock it, because these decals now are getting so soft that they're also almost going back to being a paint-like state. So if you knock them, you'll smudge them, and they will just automatically melt to whatever they touch, because that's really what's happening. The setting solution is semi-melting the decal, and it's melting it flat on. So when it wrinkles up, you might think, oh, that's going to look horrible, but it's going to actually melt it and sink down flat. So we're going to carry on now and just give this another coat. Okay, so now we're on for the full-on decaling. As you say, we've got the nose done, we were talking about earlier. That's had about 4 coats now of decal set on there. Decal set on their solution to really get it to bend in, to blend in. Obviously there's lots of creases and folds that have all got to be sort of taken care of. I'm going to crack on now and carry on decaling this. It's a massive job. There's over 100 small lettering decals all over the model, and then it's quite complex the way it's actually all going to go together. Okay, so as you can see, we've moved ahead. We've got some the decals on the bottom here for the stars and stripes. It's all getting very sort of colourful under there. Now we've got the option to decal the actual the black areas. It has black stripes, marking stripes. The thing is, trying to get them to conform and go all over and everything else is going to be a bit of a problem. So it's just as easy to mask them up as we did the invasion stripes on the bottom and just spray them. So because we're over a high gloss finish, obviously we're just going to take our time and let it build up slowly. And we'll do the same up here. A little bit of air on the go. Same on the undersides. When it gets a little bit wet, just cut back to air. And there we go. Nice black lines in sync with the other ones, and that's all we could really ask for doing it like that. It's a lot quicker than it would be if we had to sort of flap about doing a decaling, and obviously you get a better finish because of panel lines and various bits and pieces. So there we go, it's all taking shape now. Obviously I'm going to carry on now and decal the entire model. There's quite a lot to do, but we're going to work through it nice and steady until we're done. Okay, as you can see, we've now finished the actual decaling. Mammoth job, big job, lots of time. Plenty of micro salt and set to make these all snuggle down, because obviously, you know, we're on quite a showable surface, so they've got to go on, right. But as you can see, the nose fits on like that, and we've got quite a nice, lovely metal finish on here. So what I've done, I've already given this one coat a future, but we're going to do just the same way as we did the others. We're not going to spray because we don't want to lose the glossiness of this metal work. So all we're going to do, this is just your Johnson's Clear or Future flat brush, not too much, and we're just brushing it on. Now remember what we were saying, if it's a hot day, your best bet is not to do this in the midday sun, so to speak, because if it is too hot, it'll dry too quick and actually dry slightly rough and pebbly, if you like. So what we're going to do, we're just going to do this. Now for the moment I'm not doing that top green because I want it to stay somewhat matte in finish, although it will get a coat later on. It's not going to get one just yet. So we're just brushing everywhere. Now remember what we were saying as well, two things with the clear or your future. If you have got any runs on it, don't panic too much at this stage, because what you can actually do is give it a coat like now, your second coat over it, and it will melt that top one that we've put on. But as you can see, it's all going on very nicely, it's all doing its stuff. Just take your time with your brushing, nice, slow, smooth. Okay, so as you can see, it's all very glossy at the moment, but that's because it's wet. I've just finished, literally, I've done the tops and the sides. So what we're going to do now, we're going to put this down, let it stand, let it dry for about an hour, and then come back and do the underside. Now, things to remember is make sure it's not pooling up anywhere. Have a look at the light and just gentle brush strokes, light little brush strokes, anywhere where you can see any little pooling effect. What you might find is the top of the decals where they're on are a lot more glossy. All that is obviously, you know, they're smoother than the surrounding coat, so the future will sort of pool on top of it, but it will all dry back. Just the thing you don't want to get is any hairs or anything, fibres, bits and pieces like that in your actual gloss coat now, because it will have one more after this and then that's it, we're done. Okay, so we've got various bits all drying now. The decals are all drying and setting, and they've had 2 coats of setting solution. So whilst that's all happening, we can move on with other things. What I've got here is all the doors. Obviously, I've taken them off of the models now, so consequently, they all need painting on the inside. Now, being US Air Force aircraft, they're all done in yuck yellow, which is quite a good match for it. It's XF4, see, almost did it again. What I've done, this is a bit of the wide tape, Tamiya tape, put it down, both sides, tacked it on so it's all there, and obviously we've got that clamped. Now we're going to spray this neat on, so all we'll do, got quite a high air pressure, we're just going to put just a little bit because it will go a long way. Okay, so we'll just check our flow, nice flow, okay, and we're just going to dust each one. Now there's a couple of ejector pin marks, bits and pieces like that. You don't really have to worry about those at this stage, purely because, get a bit more air. Purely because the tyres and the gear struts and everything is going to hide all of those bits. So we're just going to spray around. Obviously check your references, because not all of them were the yuck yellow. Some were painted green, I've noticed. Others were actually, see, there we go, we don't get it on the other side, just on that side. Others that I've noticed when you look around at them, they were painted silver on the inside. Well, not painted, but just left bare. But for these ones, the call out is for it to be yellow, and I've had a look at some references and they do look yellow. Okay, so now we can move on to the props. Very straightforward for the P47. You just have to pick your correct blade, because obviously you do get something like 4 different options. So this is 36 and 37 because we're doing version A, and literally it's just going to pop together like that. Now what I've done with these, I've just sanded it lightly off all the way around, because you do tend to get a little bit of flash all the way around prop blades. Now this is even more relevant on the Mustang. You've got quite a bit on those. Depending on how old your kit, I've seen them worse than this, but I think this is a newer kit and is less flashy. But it's best to take them off. Now the perfect world would be to spray these on, but because of that flashing, we're going to have to nip them off. So if I just show you one, so then you've got 2 ways. You can either use a pretty worn out file, just like this, and just run it just around lightly, don't dig in if you know what I mean, just lightly right the way around the edge. Here you see, klutzy fingers, right, yeah, all the way around the edge, just like that. Then come in with a sponge afterwards and just give it a light rub, and it will just take that edge off, because obviously when you paint it and spray it, you'll notice those little flashy edges, and we can do it just like that. So then what we'll do, we'll actually fix these onto some spring-loaded clamps, just like that, for spraying, and then we can spray them. If you haven't, then obviously you can take your time, and because you're going to be spraying them flat anyway, they'll dry almost straight away, so you can put them down or lean them up against things as you go. But we're going to paint those black, and then obviously the spinner on the front here on the Mustang is going to be a 2-tone colour, so we're going to have to colour match that to the one over there. Now Tamiya call out for some colour codes for it. Just remember, obviously it will darken slightly because we're doing it as a gloss finish, or I am on this case. It will darken, so allow it to be a little bit lighter. Just one shade lighter, and that'll help out. So we're going to get the props put together. We're also going to paint up the wheels. Now there's a tutorial on painting wheels on the site, so have a look at that, but we're going to paint the wheels and get the hubs all put in, and then we can start getting the undercarriage together and the props together, and we're actually getting there. Okay, so we've got the bit of weathering going on in here. What I've done is, if I can show you here, we've done this well here. Simple wash, it's just a thinned out wash. Let's give that a little bit more thinners, just in like that. Nice mix, so it's quite a thin, and then literally we're just going to go in there and give the thing. Now it looks quite dark when it first goes in, but don't panic because it will dry out and lighten up and all things. So if I bring you in, I can show you what I'm up to. As you can see, you get it like that, and then all you do, just work it down the lines. Make sure you do all the little bulkheads and bits and pieces, and if you've got any bubbles, don't worry, they'll go as well. Okay, so we're just in here as well. All the little areas, and it'll dry just as it's done on the other side. So that's that one done. Now, been thinking about this one a lot. Now, is it worth washing it? Because obviously the model itself, using the Alclads, has got quite a lot of panel detail on there, and I'm not too sure if it's going to need a wash or to leave it as is. My preference would be to leave it as is, but I'm not too sure if it'll just help a few little areas come to life. So what I'm going to do is just basically do the underside, give it a quick wash all over, and then go from there. So we've got a bit of a wash here. I'm going to use the dark wash. Okay, and we're just going to pop it around the panels, this white area, to obviously dirty it up a little bit, just in there on these panels, just where we did the white, so it accentuate the actual the lines themselves. So we'll just leave that a moment to dry, but I think we're going to leave the rest of it as is without the need of a wash. But I think those areas probably will just need a little bit, just to help it sort of not look as quite as crispy white and all the rest of it. Obviously we are doing it in a bit of a gloss finish, the same as this one on the other one. I'm trying to bridge that gap between obviously a war-torn one. I've got various black and white photos and colour photos of them, and they look pretty well kicked in. You know, they've had a hard life, they're working out of, you know, sort of rough fields, things like that. So they were quite messy, but I want to keep this one almost sort of a very clean looking one without being too clean. So that's probably why I'm just going to do the light. So next up we're for doing the props. Now I've just sprayed some silver in the center area, masked off, and then basically we're going to do the yellow tips for the outside. So what we've done, we've literally just masked them. Now you could dip them, but obviously you tend to get that ball on the end and then it doesn't dry, so it's just as easy to really spray them for the sake of 2 minutes taping up. So what we've got here, now I've got, I call this cream yellow. What I did is a few months ago, I was working on a World War II bomber, quite a big one, and I just found that the actual tips for the yellows, obviously the warning areas, were too bright. They stuck in your face. So what I did, I added a little bit of grey to the yellow, and I call it sort of a cream yellow now. Don't ask me the ratio, because literally I just bunged it in and that was it. But what it does, it gives it that nice sort of, it is like a cream yellow colour. If you look at it, obviously we're not talking sort of the yuck yellow colours you get here, but although it looks yellow and probably does to the camera, if I get a real yellow out and give this a shake, you'll see the difference between mine. Obviously this one here is yellow, and this one is what I call cream yellow, and then obviously if you see it with this one over here, so somewhat we're in between. But when you look at it just like this, it looks just like yellow until you bring a yellow next to it, and then obviously it doesn't look quite as yellow. But I call it a sort of a cream yellow or an egg white or a egg yellow type of thing, you know. So what we've got, small colour cup on here because we were just doing little areas. Pour it in neat. It's a little bit thinned, if you like, from where I've used it before. Quite a low air pressure, only sort of 15 psi, something like that. And then what we're going to do is just going to dust those ends. Just like that as we go around. Now, careful how you handle it. Okay, so we'll clean up in just a second. Other things I've done, on the P47, I've done the gun barrels. Now I've sprayed those and I've done them steel colour because they're going to hang through. So I've just sprayed them a little steel so it's all ready and they're all drying. And obviously I've done the hubs and things like that. Wheels are painted. They're all on, ready to go shortly. So really we're sort of bringing it all together now and coming together. Now if I get the P47 here, a kitchen towel. Now those wash areas we had on before, they're dry now. So if we just put this into a square. Okay, so what we're going to do very, very gently, because we're over heavy gloss, so we don't want to take too much off. You know what I mean? So little round motions, and I don't know how well you can see in there, it's always a trouble seeing these things, but as you can see the panels obviously are standing out very nicely. And if you're going to use the dark wash like I've done here, you don't have to get another one out. You won't need to do something separate for the black because it's all the same type of thing. So we're just going to give that a rub and we'll just do the same on the other side. So now we're into the final stages now here on the Thunderbolt. Certainly the P51's drying, but what we're going to be doing shortly is basically putting the finishing touches to this one and putting it all together and bringing it all into one. So we're going to get the undercarriage fitted, guns on, we've got various bits and pieces to go on the bottom, ordnance racks and things like that. So now we're doing the spinner on the Mustang here. Now it's got a strange call out. I've already painted this one red. It basically says to use 1 part chrome to 1 part red. Well, obviously you end up with a metallic red, and that is not the case. So what I've done is I've put 1 part orange to 1 part red, and you get this sort of colour here on the nose, which is the colour we're actually after here, this orangey type colour. Now this is a little bit darker than it is on the nose, but that's because it's had a coat of future. But then I think when the yellow's on there, it'll then come back to life. Now it's always trouble masking up round edges like that and trying to get them level. Your best way to do it is, this is the way I certainly do it. Take your Tamiya tape, your thinnest one you've got, stick it down to your board like that. Okay, then take your sharp knife and your template cutter or any type of ruler, as long as it's got a nice straight edge, okay? And we're just going to cut down here and peel off. Excuse the red fingers. Okay, so we've got a nice, very thin piece, just like this. Obviously, the thinner the tape, the easier it is to conform and to get it round, to bend round corners. Now, basically, what we're going to do is we're going to start it just a little bit higher than what we like, and then slowly we're going to roll it downwards, almost like a spiral, if you like, until we're in the right position. And then once we're in the right position and we're happy with it, we'll then start making it come round to the right shape, if you know what I mean. So we're just going to roll it round like this. Okay, then once you're on, and you can then crimp it in like it, if we just bring that round. And what will happen is, obviously you're going to go higher and lower at all different points of doing it, but the idea is you'll just keep going round and it'll sort itself out, if you like. So I'm just going to raise that a bit. Okay, then put it on the end just like this and spin it and see if it looks roughly about right. And then the bits you've got left over you can bring up, okay, and then you can just stick it down to the bottom half. Then obviously on the spinner you have the top cone, if you like, and the main part, so that is where the join is going to be. Okay, little tip, if you take your colour cup off, if you're using an Evo like this top feed or any type of top feed, just open it up like that, because you're using a tiny amount of paint on a very small area. You can literally just fill up the area just like that, and that'll be enough to do your spraying, and it will save you having to clear it up and all that type of thing. Okay, nice high air pressure, neat, so because we don't want any bleeding. And just spin, rotate it on your finger, and then just increase your paint flow. Remember, we don't want it too wet, but we do want good coverage. And then we're all covered, just like that. We'll just leave that to one side just to dry for a sec, and we'll just clean out the airbrush. I don't know if we're going to be able to tip any of that back in. There we go, look, 2, 3 drops. There we go. And it makes cleaning out your airbrush a lot easier. Okay, so that's that done. Other things I've done at the same time is I've put the decals on the prop. So that's all quite, whoops, see that flying away. That one's all quite nice. And when it spins, you get the right blur in the right place. So that one's done. I've also done it for the Mustang. All I've done is flattened off the wheels for the Thunderbolt. I'll do the same for the Mustang as well, and they've got their decals on, and that's just a bit of the aircraft aluminium in the hubs, which is a separate part, and sprayed them. So literally all I did was hold those two together, just like that, onto a file, filed them down, job done. Nice, easy, straightforward job. I've also washed and weathered the door flaps for the gear doors and things like that. It's the usual thing, just the same way we did the cockpit. Dark acrylic wash, and then a little bit of grey dry brushing, and then I've just flicked around it with a bit of silver as well to take care of those. I've also done fuel tanks, put those together and sprayed them, so they're all ready to go now. And the other thing I've done is just sprayed the gun barrels on here with the Alclad as well, because obviously they're quite a nice finish and they're going to be a focal point as well, so we wanted to get them sprayed up and all ready. All I literally did, cut the bits of sprue out around there, leave them there, because otherwise, you know, trying to hold them and spray them is a bit of a nightmare, and done it like that. Everything's basically in a drying state now. As I say, we've got various bits and pieces on the go with both of them. Just need these decals to dry off just a little bit more, and then they can have a coat of a satin finish, just to, not obviously a high gloss like the aircraft, but it'll be more of a satin finish all over. But I'm waiting to dry off, and then we can get a bit of damp tissue on there and can wipe around, get rid of those little watermarks that the setting solution's left. So we'll get that done. Okay, so there's the spinner off and all done. As you can see, it looks very nice. So what we're going to do, we're just going to hand paint a coat of Future over this. Wrong one, we don't want to do it with that one, that's thinners. Important lesson there, folks, make sure you label your bottles. The only way I knew that is because it smelled. Right, okay, so here we go. Literally, Future, same as we do the other things. Start at the top and pull back. That's it, brush it downwards, away from the nose. Make sure you have covered the nose, okay? Get it all off your brush, okay, and then just drag your brush around the base just to soak up any that's too much, just like that, and then stick it over to one side to dry, and that will dry a little gel. Okay, so we've temporarily fixed on the gears and the doors, and the way I've done this, obviously because we've got the flat spots on the wheels, I needed them in, so we've got a little bit of liquid poly, we put them on. The gear doors are stuck to the legs, but the gear isn't stuck to, actually glued in place yet. So what we've done, we've got it down there so the wheels can actually dry in the correct place. Otherwise, you know, you might have it where we've made the flat spot, you know, you have it pigeon-toed and things like that. So that can dry now. And then over here on the Mustang, we've just test fitted the nose on. As we can see there, that's looking all very nice. Same thing, the gear isn't fixed. It's just literally sat on there at the moment like this. But there again, it just gets us so we can get the undercarriage glued in place without risk of it all falling over. Now in the meantime, what I'm doing here is really now we can go around and start getting all the little bits all together. I've made the decision with the Thunderbolt, I'm not going to give it a wash. I'm going to give the Mustang here a bit of a wash, but that'll be in a few minutes. But I'm going to leave the actual Thunderbolt as is, because it's quite easy to see the tonal difference. We've obviously washed the bottom, but we're not going to do the top. So that can dry. Okay, so we're going to get the pylon sorted out, and obviously we're going to get the braces fitted, and we're going to get the sway braces fitted to the underside in here as well. So they're going, so it's really all ready for the fuel tank. The other thing we can get on with is with the guns as well. They can actually be installed and they're going in a moment. And then we can just basically bring all the bits together. We can then affix the nose section, will glue just simply straight on, and then we can fit the prop, which is a bit of a tight fit. So what I might do is just shave a little bit off of the prop there as it goes in, just to make it a little bit easier to fit.